Thank you for joining us at the church online. If you live in the Visalia area and you would like to join us at one of our weekend gatherings, the church meets at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., 120 South Locust Street, downtown Visalia. Before we get started with today's message, here's something we want to let you know about. This fall, the church is launching its second campus in Tulare, California. For more information, visit welcometothechurch.com/thechurch@Tulare. Now let's get started with today's message.
Today I want to talk to you about a heavy subject. Literally, it's a heavy subject. And I thought about today, sometimes they call me Mr. Prop, Pastor Prop, because I've always got boxes or, I got a rake up here. And I thought about bringing in something. But I thought against it because every single person in this room or watching in the service online, every single person in this room is carrying a weight. Every person. And the weight that we carry, it's very tangible, but it's completely invisible. So that's why today I chose not to bring in a box or a bar or anything. Because everybody in this room today, you are carrying a weight. And depending on the type of weight that you are carrying, the type of yoke that you are tied to, the type of burden that you are carrying in your life, it depends on the amount of stress that you have, the amount of confusion that you have, the amount of burden that you feel carrying it. Now, every single person has a burden. Every single person has a yoke. But depending on the yoke that you are in and the burden that you are carrying will determine the amount of confusion, stress, pain that you are going through on a daily basis. And Jesus knows the weight that we all carry. And what Jesus did whenever he was on the earth, he talked about many things, but one of the most famous passages of Scripture that was penned from Jesus' words is found in Matthew chapter 11, verses 29 through 30. And this is what Jesus, the creator of the universe, God incarnate, God coming down in flesh, tabernacling among us, this is what Jesus said while he was here physically on the earth. He says these words, "Come to me." We'll stop right there. Come to me. He doesn't say come to religion. He doesn't say come to a place. He doesn't say come to yourself. He doesn't say come to a friend. He says come to me. He's calling you from where you are to himself. Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Jesus says there, come unto me, everybody that is weary, everybody that is heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Now, it looks like we have the mental picture there that Jesus is going to take the burden off of us. Jesus is going to take the yoke off of us. Jesus is going to take all of that stuff off of us. And now we are completely free and we have no burden. We have no yoke. And yes, I feel better now because I have no yoke anymore. I have no burden anymore. I'm completely myself. But that's not what Jesus is saying in any way, shape, or form in this passage. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. But then he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Jesus says there, listen, come to me, and I'll give you rest. But I'll give you rest not by taking every burden away from you and not by taking every yoke away from you. I'll give you rest by trading in the burden you currently are carrying for the one I'm going to give you. I'll give you rest by trading in that heavy yoke that you were tied to and that you were straining in and yet you were working with. I will take that one away and I'll give you my yoke. Jesus doesn't say, come to me and you will have no burdens anymore, you will have no yoke anymore, and you can just live life as you wish. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's saying, come to me and I will give you rest. Take my burden upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Not necessarily rest for your body, rest in your soul, where it matters the most, the soulless place where you need and you're hungry and you're hurting and no one else can see it. Jesus says, listen, let me take that off your shoulders. Let me put my stuff on your shoulders, and you're going to find rest there. Because he says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. There are three types of weight. Now, Jesus talks about it as far as a burden. That's one verbiage that that gives a mental picture of carrying something. But then he also uses a yoke. And a yoke, for a yoke of oxen, there's a giant wooden beam, and then there's a spot where the head goes. And Jesus says that you take my yoke upon you. Give me your yoke. Give me the thing that you've been tied to, and I'll tie you to myself instead. Give me the thing that you've been burdened with, and I'll give you the things that I'm burdened with instead. And Jesus says that when you do that, you'll find that it is so much lighter than the burden that you're carrying right now. But make no mistake about it, every single person in this room today is carrying a burden, is tied to a yoke. It just depends on which one you are. There's three different types. The one is the yoke and the burden of the law. The second is the yoke and the burden of self. And the third is the yoke and the burden of the grace of Jesus Christ. But everybody carries a yoke. Everybody carries a burden. It just depends on which one we're carrying. Today what I want to do is I want to kind of just go through the three. And the first one we're going to talk about is the weight of the law. In my study in this week, I came across a man by the name of Dr. J. Dwight. He taught for 58 years at Dallas Theological Seminary. A little bit smarter than me. Okay, so, and the words that he penned about the yoke of the law and the weight of the law are so good. I very rarely do I ever do this, but I cannot explain the yoke and the weight of the law better than what Dr. Dwight does. So today I'm going to read some of his words and talk about them. So bear with me. There's going to be some reading, but stick with me. Holy Spirit, I ask that you'll help people stick with this. Dr. Dwight writes this: to understand the Lord's invitation of "Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." To understand the Lord's invitation, we must understand that those to whom he was speaking were crushed beneath the weight of the Mosaic law. In this passage, Jesus was speaking primarily to those who numbered themselves among the disciples of Moses and who were the disciples of the Pharisees. Neither Moses nor the Pharisees could give rest from the pressing burden of the soul or offer the release from the oppression of the load of the law that was brought among them. Christ, recognizing that there was no other course to rest, there was no other course to peace than that to be found through complete submission to himself, came to the earth to invite people out of their old yoke and to step into a new one. So let's talk about the yoke of the law. What Jesus was saying, I'm so used to saying what Jesus is saying. Dr. Dwight is not Jesus. I want to clarify that. Okay. So what Dr. Dwight is saying there is that Jesus in Matthew, he's talking primarily to people who are carrying the invisible yoke of the law of Moses and the invisible yoke of the law of the Pharisees. And Jesus, when he saw them carrying the burden of the law of Moses and the burden of the law of the Pharisees, he realized there's no hope for them. There's no rest for them unless I offer them my yoke instead. So that's who he's talking to. The law was given by Moses, and because the Pharisees considered themselves the law's officials, interpreters, they promoted themselves as the authorities in Israel. In Matthew 23:2, we read that Christ referred to these teachers of the law and the Pharisees as men who sit in Moses' seat. Claiming the authority of Moses as interpreters and teachers of the law, they demanded that all of Israel who submitted to Moses also submitted themselves to them. And that as individuals in Israel recognized themselves not only as disciples of Moses, but also as disciples of Pharisees. When the law was imposed on humans, it did not bring liberty. It brought a weight. Rather than freedom, it brought a sense of oppression. Instead of a sense of release, it brought a sense of guilt and failure. I can never live up to this. I can never be good enough. I can't carry this. It's way too heavy. The Pharisees made no effort to bring freedom and liberty. In fact, their system imposed heavy burdens. The Pharisees codified and regulated the Mosaic law into some 365 prohibitions and 250 commandments, and required those who followed them to submit completely to the Pharisees' interpretations. Jesus looked around and he saw a people under a heavy burden, a burden that the Pharisees made no effort to lift from those who were crushed beneath the weight. And he came to them and he said, "Come to me. There's a different way to live, and I will give you rest." Those who were under the Mosaic law were said to be yoked to Moses, and those who were under the authority of the Pharisees were said to be yoked to the Pharisees. To these people, Jesus said, "Come to me, and I will take this load off of you. I will give you rest." And if you notice, he was not calling them to a system. He was not calling them to religion, nor was he calling them to a tablet of stone or traditions of men. He was calling them to himself. Discipleship, following Jesus, is the response of an individual person who stands before believers and says, "Come. Come to me." You see, Jesus, when he was on the earth, he was surrounded primarily by Jewish people who were, all of the Jews were under the weight, they were under the yoke, they were tied to the law of Moses. And the law of Moses given by God is tough enough. The Ten Commandments, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, take the Sabbath day, do not lie, do not steal, do not kill, don't covet your neighbor's stuff, don't covet your neighbor's wife. This is a heavy load that's very hard, darn near impossible to live under. But the Pharisees said, that's not enough. Let's load you up not with 10, let's give you 250. And they loaded 250 laws and 365 prohibitions, one for every single day. And humanity, the Jewish people, they couldn't handle the weight, and they lived their whole life. I can't do this. I'm condemned. I'm not good enough. I failed again. I'm not good enough. And they were being crushed by the weight of the law. And Jesus looks at them being crushed by the weight of the law, a law in which they could never even think of ascertaining, never even one time consider that I could actually do this. And he sees them being broken, completely broken under the weight of 365 prohibitions, 250 laws combined with the 10 Commandments. And Jesus says, enough is enough. You don't have to live life this way. Come to me, and I'll take that one off of you, and I'll give you a new way of living. I'll give you a new burden. I'll give you a new yoke. I'll tie you to something so much better and so much lighter than do this and don't do that. I will tie you to myself, and I will carry the load on the cross, and I will win the victory in death, hell, and resurrection. Come to me. Come to me. But I'm going to be honest with you today. I don't, and I might be wrong, I'm not saying across the board, but for the majority of people, I don't think the weight that we are under today and the weight that we are feeling, I can't do this, I can't finish this, I don't feel like that weight. I don't think we live under the weight of the law. I don't think we know enough about it. Most don't even know the 10 Commandments, let alone be able to live them. So if you don't know the 10 Commandments, how can you feel guilty that you can't complete the 10 Commandments when you only know 2? I don't think we live in a world, I don't think you are, I don't think we live in a world that is being crushed under the weight of legalism, being crushed under the weight of the law, being crushed under the weight of 365 prohibitions, 250 laws. That's not what we are feeling the weight of. The weight that we carry, the thing that we strive for, the thing that we are burdened with every single day is not the burden of, my God, I'm not good enough for you, is we carry the burden of, my God, I'm not good enough for myself. And we carry the weight of self. What is it that I want? What do I want? What do I want? What do I feel? What do I want? What do I need? What would I like? What would make me happy? And we willingly come out from under the yoke of the law because, man, we can't do that. We know that that system's broken. And we look in the mirror and we say, whoo, now that gal's pretty sharp. That guy, he's got it going on. I'll follow him. I'll follow myself. And we tie ourselves to our wants, and we yoke ourselves to our needs, and what we think will set us free very quickly becomes a very, very heavy burden. And there's a lot of people in the world today, maybe, I don't know, maybe even in the room or watching online, that you are being crushed under the weight of you. I have to be happy. I've got to be happy. And it sounds so freeing, doesn't it? I mean, that's the pill they're asking us to take, right? That's what culture say. Do what you want to do because it's you, man. Be free. Be you. Hashtag be true. Hashtag be you. Take pride in it. Be yourself. And you'll be completely free. But there's always a burden. There's always a yoke. It's either the yoke of the law, the yoke of the self, or the yoke of the grace of Jesus. And those of us that tie ourselves to the yoke of ourself, we get duped into thinking, I will be free. And in reality, in our search for happiness, we weight ourselves down. I want to be happy. And I want to do what's right for me today. I want to do what's right for me this month. This makes sense to me. And you know what? For where I am and the situation that I'm in, the needs of my family, I like this car. It's not a sin to buy a car. It's not morally wrong to buy a car. I can't see it in the Bible. I like this car. So I'm going to buy this car. Well, I can't afford the car. So I'll take a loan. Well, I can't afford a 36-month loan. So I'll take a 60-month loan. Because now I can afford the weight of the loan. And we take a car that we can't afford, so we take a loan, and not a short loan, but a long loan, because by God, this car is going to make me happy, so I will strap myself to a $500 per month loan for 60 months, 5 years on a depreciating asset, and 12 to 18 months within the payment plan, I will look in the mirror and say, why in God's name did I buy this thing? But now we are under the weight and the yoke. If I'm upside down on my car and I bought it for $35,000 and now it's only worth $12,000, what do I do now? And no, it's not a sin to buy a car. But if you buy it at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, it's a yoke and it's a burden. I'm lonely. I need someone. She'll make me happy. I know. I know we don't necessarily think alike. I know we're not. But dang, she looks good. And she likes me, and I like her, and I'm lonely, and I don't want to be lonely. Lonely makes me sad. Lonely makes me lonely. I don't want to be lonely, so I'll date her. And okay, yeah, I mean, I want to keep her. I want to prove I'm out. Yes, I'm going to sleep with her because that's going to feel good for me, feel good for her. And now we get emotionally tied, we get physically tied to someone that we know in the long run is not going to make us happy, but will really make us happy in this season of our life. And now we are yoked to, what do I do now? Do I keep sleeping with this girl that I have a heart relationship with, but I know I'm not going to marry her? Or do I cut this loose? But regardless, now I got to wait. And I got a burden because I wanted to do something that make me happy. The yoke of self, it only leads to more weight. I'll marry her because she makes me happy. I'll marry him because he makes me happy. Oh, I'm not happy anymore. Look, his belly isn't like it used to be. It's much more blessed. It's bigger now. It's overflowing. The marriage is stale. The marriage is boring. I'm not happy. I'm not happy when I look at him. He's not happy when he looks at me. We're not happy when we go out on dates. So we don't go out on dates. And our marriage is stale. Our marriage is boring. I'm not happy. I deserve to be happy. So I will get a divorce. And now what happens to the house, what happens to my monthly checks, what happens to my finance at the end of the month, who gets the kids on what days, and going from I'm not happy because of this, now I've got 17 things to figure out that make me even less happy. The weight of self. It's a burden. I want to have a happy home. And I want my kids to be happy, and they want to fit in at school. When they don't fit in at school, it makes my life a living hell. So I'm going to buy my 10-year-old a cell phone, and I'm not going to give her any blocks on her phone. Because I don't want the tension, and I want to be happy. When she doesn't have a cell phone, and she's all messed up, and she's sad, and I don't want to deal with this. I got too much other crap on my plate. So sure, I'm going to buy you the phone. And no, I'm not going to put blocks on it because it's your phone, and you got to learn to make right decisions. And we go from I don't want to be sad because my daughter wants to fit in to now, what do? I'm so sad. I never see my daughter's face. She locks herself in her room. She's texting boys at 10 years old. And now what this picture got sent to her, and what it went from, I want to be happy, so I'm going to buy her a phone. Now it's gone to, I don't see my daughter. I don't know my daughter. My daughter's got a hidden life. She's texting boys that I don't know. How do I handle this? And that's the burden of self. That's the yoke of self. It just carries, I want to be happy. 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 I love this church. This is such a great church, and the pastor's cool, and the worship's awesome, and I like the kids, and oh, it's different now, and it's not the same, and I thought it was, I'm not happy at this church. I'll go to this church now. Oh, look at this church. It's so much better. The worship's awesome. The pastor's so much funnier. He actually knows me. The kids' ministry, holy smoke, it's amazing. Oh, it's different now. It's not the same. What about that church? What about that one? And the weight of self, the weight leaves us carrying debts on things that are worthless, feeling used and abused, sexually confused, broken vows, hurt children, tension in the home, and stymied growth, leaving us in a perpetual spiritual infancy. And Jesus looks at us today in Matthew 11. Because the weight that we carry is not the weight of I'm living under the Mosaic law. We don't even know what it is. The weight that he sees us carrying is, I have to be happy. I have to please myself. This is who I really am. And Jesus looks at us and he says, and he cries out, come to me. Come to me, all of you who are burdened and carrying heavy weights, and I will give you rest. Come and learn from me. And I'll take away the burden of self, and I'll untie you from the yoke of selfish pleasure, and I will give you my burden, and I will tie you to my freedom, and you will find, this is so much lighter. So much lighter. Do you hear him today? Because every single one of us is carrying a burden. Every single one of us is tied to a yoke. We just have to ask ourselves which one. Am I carrying the burden and the yoke of being legalistic? Possibly. Am I carrying the weight of I have to please the person in the mirror? And the more I try and please him, the more I see he's a tyrant. And he takes me to places I wish I would have never gone. And I buy things I wish I'd never have. And I think that more is going to make me happy. And I get more and it never makes me happy. And I think that I take him to that restaurant and he just wants to go to another one. And I take him to that relationship and he says, that's not good enough. And I can't please the person in the mirror. Is that you? Because on both counts, Jesus says, you don't have to live like that anymore. Come to me. Come to me. And you will find a much lighter way to live. A burden, yes. A yoke, absolutely. But as Jordan comes back up, Jesus will take the weight of the law away. Jesus can take the weight of the law away because he fulfilled the law through his death, burial, and resurrection. Jesus will take the burden of self away, and he will replace it with the burden of pleasing him, not you. And you will find that he is so much easier to please than you are. Jesus said these words, and oh, I love them. Put them back on the screen if you would. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I'm gentle and I'm humble in heart, and you will find rest for your very soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Today we're going to sing a song. Jordan, I don't know the song you're going to sing. I want you to sing As the Deer. The Jewish world before Christ died on the cross was duped into thinking that more rules and more regulations would make them free and make them happy and make them in right standing with God. And in the culture and the world that we live in today, we are duped into thinking that if I just do what I want, my soul will be happy. And the more we do what we want, the less happiness is there. It is a rabbit trail of Alice in Wonderland proportions. It just goes more and more and more and more and more. And Jesus came to this earth 2,000 years ago to speak these words to you today. Stop following yourself. Stop following yourself. Start following me. And yes, you're going to have to serve me, but you will find that I am much less of a taskmaster than what you are to yourself. And I love this song. As the deer pants for the water, oh, my soul longs after you. For you, O Lord, are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. May that be the cry of our heart today. Today, let's all stand to our feet, and we're just going to sing this song and see what God does. We've got a plan. We just want to see what the Lord does. Today, if you're here and you would say, you know what, I don't know that I've surrendered to Jesus. What a great opportunity right now during this song is just to confess your sins to Jesus. Just say, Jesus, I'm not right with you. I confess to you. I come to you. And then sing this song with all of your heart. Surrender yourself to Jesus. Oh, He wants you. He wants you.